Hello and welcome back. My name is Ted and this is Ted K Studio. This is our second video in the branding series. If you haven't seen the first video about Stylescapes, it's right here. Go check it out. But for this video, we're going to be focusing on the actual logo concepts, sketching them, creating propositions for the client to review, and that's what this video will be about. So let's jump right into that. So typically I would have 3 of these different logo concept directions, and essentially here what I'm trying to do is similar to the Stylescape, is just explain to the client my thought process, where I think their logo mark can go, what it can represent without doing all the exploration work, and just get their read for it, see how they feel about it. And maybe out of the 3, they'll only like 2 directions. Maybe they'll have a clear winner, which one they like the best. And this is just trying to explain to them what the mark can represent and how it can work for the brand. So let's have a look here. So for this concept, it's gonna be called Getting You There. And the kind of describing words are speed, motion, and direction. So a lot of movement in this mark. And then I just write a quick little description. This logo concept will emphasize what Hopper does, which is getting you to your destination quickly and effectively. The mark will be simple, abstract, and full of motion. And I just show this kind of quick example of a hop or a bounce happening just to reinforce that. And then I show a few screenshot examples of different logos. And the idea here is to have this kind of abstract motion mark, have this broken up animal, kind of abstracted animal, and then show another example. For this case, I found a bunny that's outlined and kind of in motion. So if you can imagine the combination of 3, that's kind of what the logo would represent. And just explain to a client, this is one of the directions, and that's how I typically present my logo concepts before jumping into the concepting phase. Now that we pitched the Stylescapes and the logo directions to the client, the next step is to jump in there and start throwing ideas around and really start sketching the concepts. So now I just go into Procreate. Shout out Procreate, best drawing app on the iPad, and I just start drawing concepts. So these are going to be pretty rough in the beginning. I'll refine them later, but really what I'm trying to do is just get the idea out on paper. One of the concepts I keep thinking about is simplifying the bunny and making it more like this, where it's just kind of a line that moves, something like that. Really drawing the motion, and that's what I'm kind of trying to do right here. So maybe I'll use a little bit of geometry. Maybe we can make a version that's a bit more sharp here. Just a really abstract bunny. And I really love drawing on the iPad. It really allows me to zoom in, get those details, rotate it easily, quickly undo, redo. I used to draw everything on paper, but ever since the iPad released this pencil and the Procreate, it honestly just feels like just as good as drawing on real paper. So now I'm just exploring different concepts. I kind of like that, but I don't really like that it looks like a goat. I like this direction a little better. Another thing I can do is explore the actual mark. So we can do H with like a hop in it. I know these are very rough, and usually I'll present more polished sketches, but for this phase, the main thing is just to get the idea out there, and we'll worry about perfection later. Another mark is something like this, just focusing on that little bounce, removing the bunny, the rabbit. However, I don't think I'm gonna move in this direction just because I think the bunny is really that identity that we wanna keep. After all, this is a rebrand, not like a completely new logo or mark, so we wanna keep some of that history. Kind of like this is looking really cool. So it's like this wave, this motion kind of element. Jumping, hopping forward, very abstract sideways profile of a bunny. I'm gonna use one of these just to draw calligraphy, just so I can easily visualize. I really love Procreate's calligraphy selection. You can really sketch this out and see what it could look like. Alright, so far out of all these explorations, I'm leaning towards this one as the winner here. I really like this. I think this can really work, simplifying the bunny. It's similar to what they have now, just a little bit more bold, a little bit more pro. And I might just take it, copy paste it, and explore just making it maybe sharp, seeing what that would look like if it wasn't so rounded. Just refining it a bit, cleaning up the lines. So yeah, I like the way that looks. I think we're gonna go with that. So let's take this now and throw it onto the PC and start vectorizing it and going through some of these concepts in Vector. So I explored a few different versions here. The main goal was to keep that motion, that jump, and just I like the way that this is shaping up. I think it's a step forward. It simplifies the bunny. It keeps the original idea, and I think that's a good start. Now we can jump onto the computer. Now that my sketches are uploaded, we can start vectorizing the concepts here. So here are the sketches, and I think I'm gonna start with this kind of direction right here. So what I'm gonna do is just take out the pen tool, and I'm literally just gonna trace these lines that I put down. What I'm gonna do is actually make this about 40% or 30% opacity, just so it's easier to trace. So let's open up the pen tool and start drawing our lines. And whenever I'm tracing kind of organic feeling logos, I do it two ways. Either I use geometry as the beginning, or I just go straight into vector lines. If you're using vector lines, try to use as least amount of points as possible. It'll just be easier and a smoother looking mark. So let's just put down these lines here. I'm just gonna trace this. You can never really tell what a sketch will look like in the final vector form. Sometimes it looks great, sometimes it doesn't transfer too well from a sketch. Let's see what happens over here. So I'm gonna do it two ways. Actually, I'm gonna do this by hand, and then I'm gonna do a version and show you how I would use geometry for this. So this is the trace I did by hand, and now let me show you how I would recreate this with geometry. So we have clearly these kind of rounded shapes here. So I would just draw a circle, then I would draw another one coming off the top of it, then do something like this. Now subtract the smaller circle from the large one, and then subtract this piece. And now we have basically this shape, but it's perfectly geometrical. And now if I wanted to draw the headpiece, I would have to draw the circles again and use those as a guide. And let's just subtract these again so that we're left with just one shape. Now what I'm going to do is group this, flatten it, and then round the corners. I think just comparing the geometric versus the organic, I'm still feeling the organic one, but it looks a little bit like an alien with this weird shape. So now I'm just gonna go through and refine it and just keep exploring and keep making copies. That's another thing. I've already have 4 copies of this thing, and I would definitely recommend whenever you're doing these vector explorations, always make copies on top of copies, just so you could always go back and undo and see the progress. So this is our starting point. I'm gonna have this down here, and then as I continue exploring it, I'm just gonna keep going and copying. So let's try to refine this and make this look a little bit more like a bunny and less like an alien. I think what I'm going to do is use this one here. I'm going to go back to this and just keep refining it. So I'm going to use this circle as a guide, and I think I want to make the front leg a little bit thinner and shorter, and the back leg longer, like the bunny's jumping into that step. So right now it needs to be leaning more forward. I think I want it to look more like a bunny ear, so I want it to get bigger back here and then smaller here. Thing is, with these kind of organic logos, you just need to keep exploring until it looks right. Finally, after a ton of exploration, I've reached a concept that I'm really happy with, and it's this one on the very right over here. So this is clearly a bunny jumping forward, leaping forward. I love the abstract element of it, and I really like the way that this negative space accents the ear, and then the tail kind of reaffirms that it's a bunny. And you can tell the big difference from the first one that looks like an alien to the last one, which looks more like a bunny leaping forward. And let's compare it to the original logo. My goal was to reimagine this, not completely redesign it, so I like that it has a similar trajectory as the first logo here, except for this, instead of having the sideways ears, the two ears, we have it just more from the side. The next step would be just to explore the logo type now, as well as some of the colors, so that's what I'll be doing next. Also, I just want to show you the idea, so just to go back here, we've tied together this abstract kind of motion element and the bunny. Of course, it's not identical, but we have that abstract flow and the abstract motion. I think that concept translated well. Now let's explore some of the logo type and the color variations. After doing several versions and explorations with the logo type, I wasn't really feeling this cursive script font. I tried creating my own custom type, and I also tried using other fonts, and it just wasn't really working with the new simplified abstract mark. So what I'm going to do is stray away from kind of this scripty looking font and do something a bit more geometric and a bit more simplified. So let me build that custom type right now. So after customizing this type, I'm really liking this direction with the rounded letter P's, just because it matches like the very rounded element of the mark on the left here. So I'm just going to very slightly adjust this font just to fix some of these rounding elements. And now what I want to do is make sure that the type and the mark are balanced. So typically how I start is by drawing a container, and then I scale it down in the center and just see how the font feels when I place it directly in the center. So I made it a little bit larger. Now let's have a look at it. I think it's shaping up. I'm just going to move it a little bit closer now. That's looking pretty sweet. The last thing I want to do is just explore having rounded, slightly rounded letters. I think the rounded version is okay. I think I prefer the sharp cut font. So now that I got my mark and font combo, let's compare it to the original, the before and after. And the last step is to do some color exploration. I'll just start picking their original color and just take it a step further. What I want to do is show a little bit of motion in the color, very slight gradient happening from the back to the front, just to add that emphasis of movement. Just make it a tiny bit lighter there. I think I want to make the color a little more rich as well. So I kind of like how that looks. It's a little bit more bold, and there's a very slight gradient. For the type, I don't think I'm gonna go with the same color. I think I'm just gonna go in off gray, darker color. I don't want to make the type too dark like this, for example, because this is so red, and then if you have a very dark type right next to it, visually it just doesn't feel too balanced. Like if we take an example, the one on the right just feels a lot better, even though the type is still dark. It's a little bit lighter, but I don't think the blue color is really working for me, so I'm going to explore, instead of a blue, more of a brown red. Alright, I think I like this color combination. I decided to go away from the brownish color back to the gray. At first it really wasn't working, but then I looked at some of the brown options and I didn't really like the way that looked either. Sometimes it also helps placing it on a gray background because sometimes it's hard to see on a white background what the text looks like. This way I can just see the different colors and how they would look with the logo. And I think this is the mark color combination that we're gonna move forward with. Now that we got our final concept ready, the next step would be to create this presentation and really use the brand, the new type, the new mark in the branding material. So all those touch points that we discussed in the first video, we want to rebuild those, recreate those in a presentation for the client to really see this new brand, this new identity working in action. And that's what we're going to be doing in the next video. I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you learned something. If you did, please drop a like, subscribe. In the next video, we're going to be taking this new mark, this new logo that we just created and showing it to the client in different contexts and marketing examples, and creating this presentation the client can really view and really understand where we want to take this new brand. So I'll see you there. Also, just a heads up, I created a free Discord server called Studio. It's a place for designers to hang out, for you to post your work, get feedback. And if you want to follow along the branding process, post your versions so that I can leave feedback on it. That's the perfect place to join. It's free to join in the link below. Thanks.